Right, well, very excited about this session. So, warm welcome to Peter Granger and, of course, Claire Berry. Peter is the founder of Heart Bond and works with Claire now, and we'll be sharing more in this session ahead. But just to introduce Peter, Peter created Heart Bond to share knowledge about his research and its profoundly important discoveries with anyone who knows that their heart is at the core of their being and connects them with the people and things they love. So Peter and Claire's work now is focused on helping people to open their hearts, become fully present with each other, and to express unconditional love with each other and to other people. So Peter received a first-class honours degree in geophysics from Southampton University in 1981. He then worked for a seismic contractor in Libya and South Africa before joining BP, where he was involved in oil and gas exploration. Several years later, Peter felt a calling to better understand psychology with a particular interest in creativity. And in 1992, he set up and ran a successful training company that delivered business creativity and innovative courses to a variety of industries. So wishing to dive deeper into psychology, in 2006, Peter became a trainer and relationship counsellor with the Psychology of Vision organisation. And this is where Peter discovered a passion for helping people to understand and deal with their emotional issues, as well as find more meaning in life. And during his training, Peter had noticed distinct physiological changes when he connected deeply with another person. So not only was he able to measure the changes, but he has gone on to make a series of groundbreaking discoveries about the synchronization of heart rate patterns in bonded relationships. And these discoveries have the potential to change our understanding of psychology, relationships, and the nature of consciousness. And this just amazes me. Peter taught himself to code in order to develop an innovative smartphone app that allows anybody to experience and practice heart-to-heart connection for themselves. So Peter's latest book, Connected Hearts, Finding Love, Happiness and Spiritual Meaning Through the Wisdom of Your Heart, is out now and tells a fascinating story of the heart synchronization research and describes the incredible power of the heart to heal us and bring us together with the people and things that we love. So I'm really looking forward to this, Peter. Over to you.
Thank you, Louise. So you can see the title there about the science of why it matters, and I really do want to get onto that towards the end. But today we've heard three wonderful talks that have shown us just how much more important the heart is to us than just being a pump that pumps the blood around, albeit for our whole hearts. And Liz showed us, how we can consider the heart to be something that helps us find ourselves, to connect with others, and indeed spirituality. Tim showed us the soul-to-soul connection, which we could also call heart-to-heart. And Louise has just shown us how we can listen to the heart in many different ways. What I want to show you in this talk is that we can actually measure these things scientifically now. Proper empirical science is showing exactly what we've been talking about. Of course, this has been known about for thousands of years, but now we can actually, with relatively simple technology, show this happening in real time. So let me just click on, talk about why I started doing this work, this research in the first place. The research has actually been carried out with family members, friends, and volunteers from Gavin's HeartMath community. And we've been doing it for 10 years. But what got me into this was my experiences with the Psychology of Vision organization, where we had done eye-gazing exercises. But I also became a relationship coach, and that brought me more experiences, both for myself and watching my clients. And I realized that there were physiological changes going on during the healing process. And that's really what I set out to measure. The changes were things like feelings of warmth, electricity in the body, a general sense of being okay. I just wondered, well, could we measure those? If we could, that'd be really interesting to follow. So that was just for one person. So what I was really contrasting was the difference between these sort of experiences and these sort of experiences, which we've all had. To be human is to have these experiences. But going from this to this, I knew in myself involved quite dramatic physiological reactions, experiences. So that's really where I started. And I started looking around at how we might measure this. But of course, straight away, we find out there's an enormous amount of research being done into the brain. Neuroscience gets a vast majority of the funding these days for research. And that, of course, is very, very sensible. We know we have this incredible, well, it's often described as a computer at the top of our bodies. And we know from all sorts of studies that various thoughts, feelings, and indeed memories are believed to be located within there. But that is a brain-centric view. And what I began to realize was that there was another part to this. What I want you to do is watch this image as it appears and just notice what you feel. Just focus in on those eyes. We were doing it this morning with Tim. But with babies, I personally find I can actually feel something change in my body. And that feeling is measurable. And that's what we're going to be measuring and talking about this afternoon. So we'll come back to babies in a minute. But what I realized was that the heart was important as well. And there's actually very little research, relatively little research into the heart, although that is improving nowadays. We're seeing an increasing number of people studying the heart. As Liz mentioned, interoception is a way of looking at how the heart communicates with the rest of the body, the brain, and other organs and other parts of the body. And that is a growing body of research. But that's what I'm going to be focusing on today, not the brain, but the heart. The brain is related to this story, but almost in a secondary way. So what we can do with the heart is measure its heart rate. Now, if you go to the doctors, they might take your pulse, or you could take your own pulse, and they might tell you your heart rate is 72 beats per minute, which is a typical average for human beings. Now, that is an average over a minute or so. What is actually happening, if we look in detail, is your heart rate is going up and down. At the bottom here, you can see the red lines here. This is the ECG, electrocardiogram, which is a way of measuring each heartbeat. So each of those spikes is a beat of the heart. You'll notice those spikes are getting closer and further apart at different times. So the heart rate here is speeding up and then falling and then speeding up again. And this is quite typical and indeed healthy. And all sorts of things can affect this. And a lot of research has been done into this. So the obvious is exercise. If we exercise, the heart rate goes up. You might have an infection. A couple of weeks ago, I got a cold and my heart rate went from an average of about 70 up to 90. So we can actually monitor infections and in our heart rate. The hormones we have in our bodies that are flowing around, they can change heart rate over time. And of course, drugs, both recreational drugs, but also pharmaceutical drugs can have a huge effect. And much of the research is done into this sort of heart rate variability, as it's called, the change in heart rate with time, by injecting drugs and monitoring heart rates. But the two at the bottom are the ones I really want to focus on this afternoon. And that is the breathing and the emotions. The breathing, this is actually showing a breathing cycle of a breath in and a breath out. It comes down again. We breathe in and it comes down and it goes out. And that rise and fall, which can be up to 10, even 15 beats per minute in a healthy person, is completely natural. And in fact, the higher your level of heart rate variability, the healthier you're likely to be, both mentally and physically. And a lot of research is being done in this at the moment. Breathing has become a very popular thing in well-being, and a lot of people doing different types of breathing. I'm going to show you one specific form of breathing today called resonant breathing. There are many types, and again, breathing is good for you. Not breathing is very bad for you, as we know. But certainly a deeper and longer breath is better for you. And finally, emotions on this list. Our heart rate can go up and down as much as, well, even in normal conditions, 15 beats per minute, simply when we think or feel something. But of course, they can shoot up to massive heart rates if we get really frightened or really excited. So heart rate variability is what we're after. And what we can do is look at the shapes of this heart rate variability. And a lot of this work has been done by the HeartMath Institute in California. So they're the research institute that supports Gavin and his work. And they have done decades of work into heart rate variability. And they have recognized there are two styles to it. One is what we might call a more jagged or noisy signal. And then there's this rather beautiful, smooth signal. If you remember your school maths, you'll have heard of sine waves. Well, this is a sine wave mathematically. It goes up and down smoothly. And this relates to the breathing. So the in and out of breath is what creates this pattern. And they've termed this a coherent pattern of both breathing and heart rate. Because what actually happens is the heart rate follows the breathing. And this has been found to be, well, not only a measure of our emotional state, but also to have enormous consequences in terms of mental and physical health. There's, again, an increasing amount of research going on into this subject. But I'm telling you this now because I want you to notice that we will be using this particular pattern and seeing it time and again in this presentation. So just a little bit more about the heart and the brain. Of course, they are joined together. They're joined together by something called the vagal nerve. The vagal nerve is, in fact, the most important nerve in the body, and it joins up all the organs and various other parts of the body. But it's sending messages to and fro from the brain. So the brain sends messages to the heart, and the heart sends them to the brain. Now, in about 2010, 2011, this research by Amo came out where they had been looking at the heart, and they discovered 40,000 neurons actually in the heart, in the heart itself. And this was termed the little brain. And what scientists began to realize is that the heart has its own intelligence. It's not just a machine that is fired by the brain. The pacemaker itself is actually in the heart cells itself. If you disconnect the heart from the brain, those cells will keep beating at about 100, 110 beats per minute. And what speeds it up and slows it down is a complex, incredibly complex, what's called autonomic system, that's where messages are going in each direction between the brain and the heart and all the other organs in the body. But what has been discovered is that more information travels from the heart to the brain than the other way around. So you immediately want to ask the question, why would that be? Why would the heart be doing that, changing things in the body? In fact, it's been found now that the heartbeat affects things like cognitive function, visual function, and all sorts of other measures in the body. It's even been found to be beating within, a beat has been found within the waters of the brain of the heart rate. So again, very, very recent research going on into this, fascinating and exciting. So I've already mentioned that, the speeding up and slowing down. So it is complicated, but we can measure it in fairly simple ways by just measuring our heart rate. Right, so this is the app that I've created to measure the heart rates and the synchronization. So we're just going to measure Claire for now. So I'm just going to connect to her. And right, there we go. Can you all see that, hopefully? Could someone say yes if they can see it? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Louise. Okay, I can't at the moment see the gallery. So this is Claire's heart rate moving up and down. So I'm going to ask her now to just let her settle a bit. We'll all be excited here. So just to show that it's relatively easy to measure this heart rate variability. So that's our heart rate going up and down. We haven't got numbers on it, but you can see her heart rate here in blue changing. Okay, so if you breathe in a bit deeper now, Claire. just to show that it will be affected by breathing. It takes a little time to respond. You can see the heart rate goes, here we go, down and then up again. And she breathes in and then breathes out. Okay, that's lovely. Thanks, Claire. I'm going to stop there before I run out of battery because I've got to put my charger back in. Okay, so that's heart rate variability. Hope you can, that all makes sense. All right, so let me just change this out. So here we have just the two ways that we can measure. It is relatively cheap and simple nowadays to measure heart rate with either a blood pulse system. This is the HeartMath system, where it's measuring the pulse in the ear and then Bluetoothing that heart rate to a mobile phone. And the same thing can happen with a chest band measuring ECG. So we've been using both in the research. These things are relatively cheap. This one's about 60 or 70 pounds, and a lot of athletes use them now, so they're easily available. Right, so let's move on now and talk about two people. So this is Claire and myself sitting on a sofa, and we were feeling love for each other. I'm in dark blue here and Claire's in red. Typically, Claire's heart rate is about 10 beats per minute slower than mine on average. But watch what happens when I overlay those signals. So suddenly we can see a beautiful synchronization. We can see it over the several minutes going on, but also we can see it's going on at the level of the breath. So our breathing is synchronizing. Now, this is very typical of what we've seen. The heart rate variability synchronizes when we are connecting with each other. All right, so this is close to. Now, this isn't new. We haven't discovered this. This has been around for many decades, actually, in terms of the research. And there's all sorts of very interesting things being done for what's called physiological synchronization. Other measures are also brain and skin resistance and things like that. But we're focusing here on the heart rate variability synchronization. So loving couples have been studied, and it's shown the synchronization, as we've just seen. Choirs singing together, and even the style of music is interesting here. Sacred music apparently synchronizes people better than rock music, although others may disagree with that. It may have been the sort of people who were doing the experiments. Mothers and babies have been shown to connect. HeartMath have done their own research into this, and even animals and humans have been shown, horses and humans and dogs and humans. So lots of interesting studies at close proximity. But the one I wanted to just talk about, because it's quite fun, is this firewalking ritual, which was carried out in Spain. And in this experiment, they were measuring the heart rate variability of 3 people. So we've got the mother here, we've got the son here, and we have a spectator in green. So the son's in blue, the mother's in red, the spectator's in green. And this man ran across the coals 3 times, once, twice, 3 times. FW is the firewalk. And what you'll notice is that his heart rate variability is going up and down, not surprisingly, because he's dancing on coals, but so is his mother's. Okay. In fact, she was even synchronizing before he started. So she was picking up something about perhaps his tension before he started. Some very obvious synchronizations. But notice the spectator is very different. So this spectator wasn't related to this man, and they were just watching, and there is very little synchronization at all. And this is a key finding of much of the research in the past, and that is that it's the quality of the relationship that matters in terms of the synchronization. And that's what we were finding as well in our early research. So let's just move to one of those other examples, mothers and babies, particularly mothers and babies, because they do have that initial very, very strong bond. Most of the research has been done between mums and their babies, but I know there's at least one group is now looking at fathers and their children. But there is some very strong research, strong evidence here that babies' heart rates do synchronize with their mothers. And this has been related to shared, or to hearing the breathing, to actually feeling the heartbeat through the through the cuddle, and various other sensory feedbacks. Now, what's even more interesting is that it's been picked up even in the fetus. So babies that haven't even been born are already synchronizing with their mother, which is incredible. And maybe it does go back to 16 days, 16 days, yes, that Louise was mentioning, for the origination of the heart, which is the first thing to grow in the body. So maybe we grow to know synchronization already. Very interesting research. So let's take you to our very first experiment, which I did with my good friend Danny, who's in the audience with us today. He and I sat in a room about 2 meters apart, and we just gazed into each other's eyes. And this is what we found. This is literally the first experiment 10 years ago. Unfortunately, I lost the data almost immediately. So you're seeing a paper print here. So I couldn't analyze it in much detail. But hopefully you can see there is some nice synchronization going on. Now and again, it falls away completely, which is typical of what we see. And we now know that's due to distraction. When we get distracted from each other, it falls away. So that was the first one. I've been lucky enough to work with Gavin and his community for many years now. And we've done a lot of research together with his people. And this is just one, which was in London a few years back. And here we wired up 2 people who were, in fact, strangers in this case. But they were wearing monitors that would record for the whole day. So we had 4.8 hours of data. We were doing experiments where the grey columns are, but those experiments are really a tiny part of the day. What's more interesting is to notice just how generally synchronized these 2 people were. They were strangers, but they were both engaged in the same purpose, and they were getting to know each other, but they were connected. And that's the key. It doesn't have to be family. Anybody we connect with, this will happen. And that's certainly what our research has shown. This in the middle, by the way, is where they were having their lunch. So even where they walked out to Starbucks and Wagamama's, I think it was, they were synchronizing as well. So that's a really quite dramatic piece of data. But just coming back to a more normal situation, let's look in detail now what's actually going on. What it says here is synchronization is natural. What I want you to realize is this isn't something that only happens during an experiment or in very special circumstances. This is going on throughout our lives. And we're dipping in and out of synchronization, which is connection really with other people all the time, which if you think about it is exactly what we experience in our relationships. Sometimes we feel connected, sometimes we don't. We might get distracted and start thinking about what we're going to have for dinner instead of being present with the person we're next to or connected to. So these are very typical. And you see here towards the end of this sequence that we're getting a nice correlation between these 2 people. So you can actually see these are the numbers up here. This yellow shows the degree of correlation going on. The green is an average. You can see it's generally rising through this conversation. There's a friend of mine having a conversation. What you're actually seeing plotted here is the coherence, which is really a measure of how much our hearts are in balance, certainly, but also experiencing positive emotions, gratitude, appreciation, and love indeed. It doesn't have to be a romantic love. It can just be love in a more general sense. But that's what we are finding. This experiment here is one where we were trying to work out what we were actually talking about. So it's quite a long experiment, but I recorded our conversations. So it's with a friend, a couple of meters apart. And here again, you're seeing the coherence measured here. And you can see some very distinct synchronizations. And although you can probably not read it here, I can tell you that the conversation here was about spiritual matters, higher leveled conversation, what inspired us, what frightened us even about perhaps, working in some of these areas, which are quite challenging to the current paradigm, and what inspires us particularly, and what gives us awe. So it's also about authenticity. When we are being our true selves, that's when we see these synchronizations. And this is what's interesting, is you can actually still be talking and it is picked up. It's not about being silent and meditating. So I thought this is the best place to bring in this word, inspiration. I've just mentioned it. And it comes from the etymology of inspiration is from the Latin inspirare, which is to breathe or blow into. So this is already indicating that this is something profound. The word spirit comes from that, inspiration. So breathing, spirit, inspiration, they're all one of the same thing. And as you'll see in just a moment, that is what we're finding with the research. So this is a breathing example where these two people were friends. So this is again from our London research day. They were back to back. They were 1 meter apart, not speaking to each other. And what you can see here is we've got this fantastic synchronization, totally in phase for over 5 minutes. This is that. The red bar here means correlation. So red means high correlation. But over 5 minutes, just synchronized breathing. Both these people are trained in the heart math technique, which is based on resonant breathing, which is about 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, slightly deeper than normal, but also thinking positively about oneself, other people, and the world. So it's very much about a positive pattern of both breathing and heart rate. So that in itself was an extraordinary result. So coherent breathing. This morning with Tim, we did eye gazing, sustained eye contact, and here's the heart rate patterns of two people doing that together. Again, you can see it going up and down, quite obviously, and synchronizing. You can see the visual synchronizations. But when we extract from that coherence again, we see something even more dramatic. We see that the correlation is coming and going, but it's particularly obvious in here. Look at this one here, which means the hearts were essentially feeling the same at that moment, right the way through that period. And the coherence we know is related to positive emotion, gratitude, appreciation, and love. So eye gazing, we can confirm what you were doing this morning, and I'm going to show you in a moment, this works at a distance, does synchronize our heart rate, our hearts synchronize when we are making sustained eye contact. So we're extremely present with someone and paying them attention. Tim used the word attention. That is the word I would use. Whatever we attend to, we connect with. So in this case, it's another human being. And this happens automatically. You don't have to think about doing it. That's the worst thing you can do. Just feeling those feelings is enough, provided they're genuine and authentic. Okay. Presence and attention. Now, in any scientific endeavor, it's important to ask why we're seeing such results. And of course, all the research that's gone before has done that. And that in our own research, we've done the same thing. So one of the very obvious things that might be happening, let's say we're measuring a choir simultaneously for their heart rate patterns. The actual singing, the vibrations of the singing and the larynxes and the conductor who's actually encouraging the rhythm, that is likely to lead to synchronization. And research shows that that's true. We will tend to synchronize if we have a rhythmic pacing. One explanation. Another one that comes up all the time is that we're just simply responding to the cues, the sensory cues. That's the conventional senses like hearing and sight particularly. So we could hear someone breathing, we could watch their chest moving up and down, or perhaps we could see their eyes and through that connection see different eye dilation, which we know happens when people connect. So that's another very sensible explanation. Or there's something in the environment. I mean, I jokingly say we could have radio 4 around us. It could be an aerial beaming out radio 4, and we're both picking it up in our hearts. So we're both synchronizing. Or that could be music, radio waves, but it could be other things like sound in the environment and vibration. Say from a factory next door that's got a very, very, very low frequency vibration, we might be picking that up. So that's another sensible argument. And these are the key arguments that have been used in the past. And we have considered them, of course. But that, or I should say, and really, and we wanted to explore this further. Was that really true? If these synchronizations occur because we are connecting more with somebody, because we're becoming attentive and present, surely if we monitor that in real time, we should be able to see that changing in real time. So this was from my notebook years and years ago. Sorry about the scruffiness of it, because I don't write very clearly. But I've said here, we are connected by love. Heart measures connection. And here I set up a dream almost. Imagine if you could measure this behavior I've just shown you for one person and compare it to another person, but not after the event, actually as it happens. So if we could do this, we could experience the feelings of appreciation, gratitude, love, and watch the data change, watch the synchronization appear and disappear. Now that was an ambition, and I knew it was going to be difficult, but that really was the next step. I felt this was the best way to test these other arguments about why it's happening. But I'd also sensed there was something else going on, and that really is what the rest of the story is about. So being a bit of a crazy inventor, I couldn't do any software development at this point. I hadn't the coding skills. But what I did have was 2 projectors from a previous career in training. So I simply put these together in a cradle, got 2 computers running heart rate variability here, and we projected the same images, well, the image from one screen and the image from the other screen onto a whiteboard in the room. And that gave us our first real-time synchronization displays. We couldn't analyze it very well at this point, but at least we could display it. And this was stunning, actually, because it suddenly made us realize just how powerful real-time analysis would be. As far as I know, no one else is doing this in the world. It seems an obvious thing to me now, but then we've been through the process. So the other thing, eventually, I reached a point where that was just too clunky, all those cables and what have you. But I wanted to move on. I wanted to get this into a smartphone app. That was the next dream. And that required me to teach myself coding, as Louise said. And that's the next step, really. Took me months, as Claire will vouch for, even going on holiday, doing coding. And eventually, though, we got there. And this is just to show you quickly how it works. So 2 hearts, Bluetoothing when it starts, Bluetoothing into the phone. So it's analyzing and displaying the data as we go along. And that's what I'm going to show you now. We're going to move into this real-time data. So I'm going to start off by showing you an example of Claire and myself. We were 2 meters apart, back to back, in this room I'm in now, not speaking, but I was feeling love for her while she distracted herself reading a book. So this is what happened. So you can see the data there. It's speeded up enormously, just so you can see it. But the up and downs are the breathing still. Notice I'm in blue, Claire's in red. Notice her heart rate is beginning to follow mine. And if you look at the detail of this, let's just stop it in a second. Okay. If you look at the detail of this, you'll notice that her breathing is rather faster than mine. Mine is this blue here, going up and down. It's about 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Claire's is roughly 3 seconds, 3 3 to 4 seconds, 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out, because she was distracted. She wasn't focusing on being coherent. Yet her heart rate is following it. And we literally made this discovery in preparing for this talk and getting this demonstration ready. So this speaks of an incredible intelligence in the heart, in the brain, wherever it's coming from, in that system, the nervous system, to be able to synchronize to this extent. So that's one example. I want to move on because I'm conscious of time. The HeartMath organization, who have done similar research to this, have speculated, in fact, they've measured, it's more than speculation, they've measured the magnetic field that comes out of the heart muscles. And they know it can be measured to about 2 meters, at least 2 meters out from the body. So if we're close to someone, it's possible that we will interact with them. But the next experiment we did, it cast doubt on that being the only thing that was going on. I think we will be getting this happening close by, but at a distance, that isn't true. Because this is the experiment, we say it changed everything. Claire and I were separated by 318 miles. I was away working, she was back here in Essex. So in Edinburgh, I was in a room without any telephone, feeling love for Claire for 20 minutes. And there you can see the synchronization, very obvious visually going on. So we weren't talking to each other. There was no internet at this point. We didn't even have our internet version of our app at this point. And here again, you can see the strong correlation here of several minutes and the shorter correlation of the breathing. Yes, the breathing was synchronizing at 318 miles apart, even though there were no sensory cues. So we can already say that those explanations for local close proximity synchronization, this can't be going on here. It might be happening close by, and it probably is, but it can't be happening at these distances. We simply can't hear someone, we can't see them. There may be some complex electromagnetic feature going on, but even that is hard to imagine with all the interference effects of the environment, the man-made environment. So that this experiment really changed the way we were working. In fact, I completely doubted that this was true. I was trained, like all scientists are, that this is impossible, that we cannot communicate except with our physical senses. But we were seeing this data. And so we've repeated this experiment over and over again at different distances of separation. And here's our world record at the moment for distance apart, over 5,000 miles. I was in California, Claire was in Essex. I got the good trip here. But again, you can see a beautiful synchronization through this experiment. And what's really notable here is the way Claire connected with me here, because she reported back at the end of the experiment, because we routinely took notes of what we were feeling. We had a clock running often just to see the time. So what happened at 980, or whatever it was, 920 seconds. And you can see that we were the most correlated there. She felt really connected to me. So let's move on. Let's try a demonstration at a distance. So this, I have to say, has never been done before in public. And it's quite tricky to do because we're going to be connecting up with Militia, who is in Hertfordshire, near Hitchin. She's 38 miles away from Claire, who's in the room next to me. Okay, now we are using an app that I've developed that runs through the internet, but those two heart rate signals do not interact. They are just passing through a server. So it means I can see Militia's data back here in Essex. Right, so I just need for Militia to come up. So I'll just stop the share. And there she is. Hi, Militia. Right, and Chris, her partner, is going to help as an assistant. And in the room here, I have Jackie, who's going to help as well. Because in a moment, I'm going to silence Militia and Claire so they can't hear what's going on. Otherwise, there could be some cheating going on. Right, so we need to get going. I just need to get the app up. Just a second. Are you running already, Melisha? At your end, is your heart
running? Yeah.
The app's running. Thank you. Yeah, Claire, I've got here. So I'm going to ask Melisha to turn around, and Claire's also already turned around, so she can't see the screen. She can't see what's going on. Oh, Melisha's got her earmuffs. I don't think Claire's got her earmuffs. She's forgotten to put them on. Oh, she's got them on. Right. So they can't hear. Right. I'm hoping you can see that. Louise, can you just tell me
Yeah,
you
we
can
can
see
see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. We're going to find. There are the two heart rates again. So I'm going to ask them just to focus on each other, and then we'll leave them for a minute. Yeah, and if you just, yeah, you okay then? So they're focusing on each other. We're going to leave them for a few minutes to do that, and we'll come back to them. Okay. Right. Let's just stop the share. The other thing we've discovered by doing this research, and this is a major piece, it's probably the most important piece, is that we can change our attention on the other person and deliberately change their heart rate patterns. This is a local one. It's just a couple of meters back to back. But this is typical of what we're finding now, is that the person here in green was deliberately changing the person who's in orange. And they were just distracting themselves reading a book. And you can see where we asked them to pay attention. You can see that there's a rise in the synchronization and indeed the power of the signals. As you'd expect, the coherence has gone up here in both cases. And here we have a mother and daughter where the daughter was raising the mother's heart rate through here. There's a beautiful one through here, but generally through here. And then we can plot different measures from this data. So we can see that we can affect another person simply through our thoughts, feelings, and through love. Let's call it love. That's what it is. I'll just run this and then we'll come back to the other experiment. This is 2 meters apart again. Myself and Claire, again, preparing for this talk. And this time I recorded the two heart rates. We saw these earlier, actually, but I'm now showing you the green, the light green, the olive green is the amount of correlation between those two signals, the amount of synchronization in real time. But the green is the power of my coherence, which is the power of my loving attention. So my loving attention was improving the synchronization, the correlation between these two signals. So this is very, very recent. Literally in the last few days, we have realized that actually the breathing is probably, and I'm saying probably causative. It's what causes the synchronization to change. But that needs a lot more research, because proving causation in science is a very, very tricky thing.
Let's return now to Claire and Melisha's demonstration. What I'm going to show you is a speeded up video of this 4-minute experiment. So here's the data with Claire's heart rate in blue and Melisha's in red, and you can see they are indeed synchronizing. Remember that Claire and Melisha are 38 miles apart and they can't see or hear each other. Here's another display from the experiment, and you can see from the orange and green lines that Claire and Melisha's coherence was also synchronizing. So remember that the coherence is a measure of positive emotion, the feelings of gratitude, appreciation, and love. I showed you earlier that we can influence another person's heart rate patterns by holding them in our attention and feeling appreciation, gratitude, and love for them. And I want to show that this is also possible at a distance. Here are the results of another experiment recorded 143 miles apart when Melisha and I were practicing for Big Heart. You can see the correlation in the heart rates above, but below you can see in pink and green our coherence. My data is in green, and I was deliberately changing my focus on Melisha throughout the experiment. This data shows that we can alter someone else's heart rate variability patterns through our thoughts and feelings, and this can happen close to or at a distance. For the last few minutes of this talk, I want to focus on why the science matters. It's really quite simple. The data is showing that we're not separate, but instead that we're connected energetically through our hearts. We've been told this for thousands of years by mystics, sages, and spiritual masters, but now we can see it in our data. Here are some words from my favourite scientist, Einstein, who did much of his work from the imaginal. He's responding to somebody who had written to him about the loss of their son who had died recently. And he speaks of how that we are not separate but connected through our consciousness, and that the separation is an illusion. So what our data is showing is something about consciousness, or if you prefer the word awareness, and the way that it must extend beyond the confines of the brain. What we're seeing in our data is that the heart and brain as a system has non-local awareness. And this is what is connecting us, we believe, energetically.
So the implications of this is that it transforms how we know ourselves, and it certainly challenges current psychological understanding. Psychology will need a rewrite if we can get this out into the mainstream scientific community, which is very resistant to it. That's what will have to happen, because most experiments have been done assuming that we've only got physical senses. There's another sense. We have the power to improve our relationships just through our thoughts, feelings, our attention, our presence. And even more excitingly, we can help others simply by opening our hearts and feeling love, appreciation, gratitude. Just being present, valuing them, removing our judgments makes all the difference. And our bodies know about it. So we are never separate from the people we love. We live miles and miles sometimes away from our loved ones, but we can actually know that we're connected and help them at a distance. Now, we live in a world that is full of pain at the moment. We see it every day on our news. Many, many hearts are closed and defended, and that's because they're frightened. It's fear that closes the heart. We know that. Love opens it. Love connects us. So that's what we certainly can do more of. And, you know, we're seeing some terrible, terrible things happening in the world at the moment. But our hearts can open naturally. That's what happens when we become present, when we attend to people, when we value them. That's what happens naturally. We don't have to work at it. It's already there. So I'd encourage you to do that with your friends, family. Even do it for the people who are suffering in the war zones at the moment. It will make a difference, a physical difference, a mental difference, an emotional difference. And that's why we put today together. We wanted to bring you all this amazing knowledge, the intuitive side, the scientific side. They're the same thing, really. But at least now we can show this. And that's why we put together the Awakening Heart Collective, because we want to bring together people like yourselves, other scientists who've got vision, and eventually, hopefully, the mainstream scientists, and just to apply this stuff, because we need it in this world. So thank you for listening.